On March 31st, 1998, Blizzard Entertainment released StarCraft. It's a science fiction real-time strategy game that features 3 factions, the Terran, Protoss, and Zerg. I have personally never found myself drawn to the human races, so Terran was never my choice. Instead, I was initially drawn to the Protoss, who are enigmatic, technologically advanced, and incredibly powerful. But as time went on, I found myself playing more and more Zerg, especially the Zerg campaign. After all, at the time, my parents were not allowing me access to the internet, and now that I'm an adult, good job parents, you were definitely doing the right thing. In the 3rd mission of StarCraft's expansion pack, Brood War, the player is tasked with collecting 10,000 minerals, or with the optional objective of infesting command centers. If you don't already know, the Zerg has a unit called the Queen, which when a command center is damaged, it can fly over and essentially grow a bunch of Zerg biomatter all over the structure. By doing this, the Zerg player takes control of the building and can use it to produce a unit called the Infested Terran, which costs 100 minerals and 50 gas. Now, I was a competitive StarCraft 2 player, and if you're familiar with that game, you'll think of the Infested Terran as a weak unit spawned by the Infestor that deals damage at a range. However, in StarCraft 1, that is not the case. It's much more analogous to the Baneling because the way it deals damage is by detonating itself when it makes contact with a target. But unlike the Baneling, which is a fantastic unit, the Infested Terran is kind of trash. So after you infest all the command centers on the map, the next mission starts and it gives you all of those buildings in order for you to be able to produce Infested Terran. The frustrating thing is that while you do start with 10,000 minerals, which were mined in the previous map, you do not start with a good complement of gas, and Infested Terran take a decent amount of this resource. When I first sat down to play this map as a kid, I remember building an army of Infested Terran, running them all in, and then realizing that when one of them detonates, it deals splash damage to all units surrounding it. So even friendly targets, meaning that a control group of 12 Infested Terrans, usually result in about 2 detonations. Not to mention the fact that while they are fairly fast, many ranged units like siege tanks can just shoot them down before they ever reach their target. The game had effectively taught me the lesson, which is these units are really not good, I shouldn't be using them. When I sat down to make this video, I decided to look for professional play where Infested Terrans were used as a part of a game, and believe me, there is very little footage of this. I only found one example, and it's actually a match where a Zerg player is facing a Protoss player. There just happens to be a neutral command center in the middle of the map. I think this isn't the sort of legitimate play that you do to win a game. It's more like building a nexus in someone's base to make them angry. So because Infested Terrans are one of the worst units in the game, and because this campaign mission is specifically trying to force you to use them, I thought, wouldn't it be fun to beat the entire map using only these self-destructing units? It is technically possible because Infested Terran can destroy buildings, and the mission objective is to destroy every enemy building. I think this is going to be a really difficult challenge, but I'm confident that the Infested Terran can pull it off. So, while this one might be possible, there are other challenges when using units or Pokemon that self-destruct that are not possible. And so, that leads us to the Regis, which are very similar to Infested Terran. Because when they start at level 5, the only move that they know is Explosion. If we examine this closely, we quickly find out that the Regis are stuck in the early game without the ability to gain experience. No experience means they can't level up and learn new moves which deal direct damage, and as a result, they cannot progress with their playthroughs. If you're unsure as to why this is happening, let's go through all of the details now. Whenever the Regis use the move Explosion, outside of the very first tutorial Zigzagoon battle, the player will black out, and as a result, the PP on Explosion will be restored to 5. Because of this, I can never deplete my PP to use a move like Struggle to knock out Pokemon and gain experience. Also, whenever the Regis knock out an opposing Pokemon using Explosion, they do not gain experience points. The only way to deplete its PP then is to use a Revive, which unfortunately you cannot purchase at the first Pokemon Center. There are also no revives that can be found in the first 2 routes of the game. Also, unlike Generation 1 and Generation 2, the first rival battle must be completed. Whenever one of the Regis uses an Explosion here, the player is just sent back to the last Pokemon Center or the player's house, and the rival has not changed their position. Because of this, the guy who's examining footprints will never move, and you cannot progress with your playthrough. Now you might think that I could bend my rules and catch some Pokemon and then use these to switch train the Regis up to a higher level, but no, that doesn't work because you cannot get any Pokeballs until the rival is defeated. You might then think, what if you traded the Regis to a different game, leveled them up there, and then sent them back, using them to defeat the rival once they've learned a different move or depleted their PP. Well, once again, no, that doesn't work because you can't trade before you receive the Pokedex, and you get the Pokedex after you defeat the rival. Here are my rules, by the way. I can only use my starter in battle, I can't use any items in battle, I'm not allowed to use glitches or exploits, and I also can't use evasion boosting moves. In this case, the Regis cannot complete the game, so yeah, that's that. Let's bring up the tier list. All 3 of these Pokemon have to be placed in the impossible tier. So I've completed my requirement. I made an official video and I have now ranked 3 Pokemon. And yeah, then I looked at the tier list a little bit, and which one of the Regis should be at the top of the tier list and which one should be at the bottom? I could just arbitrarily put the one that I think would be the best at the top, or I could put all of the graphics on top of each other, but that looks really ugly. I guess I could rank them with base stats and the spread that I thought would be best, but that also doesn't seem very scientific. I could use their typings to rank them, but I don't think that one of them really stands out as a clear favorite. I personally would predict that Regirock would do the best, but that is just a guess at this point. And when ranking Pokemon, I really do not want my channel to be about making guesses. The only way that I saw fit to move forward was to do actual playthroughs with all of the Regis. The way that I'm going to make this happen is simply by setting Explosion's PP to 0. By doing this, my Pokemon can use Struggle at the beginning of the game to gain experience points and to level up. There were a couple other ways of approaching this problem, like forcing the Regis to use Explosion 5 times and then setting the PP to 0, or even better, I could have added in revives to be used after I explode. But in this special case, I will just remind you what these Pokemon are competing for: the top spot of the impossible tier. Because of that, I decided to take the most fun and concise approach. Let's start by watching footage of Regirock, which was the first of the 3 that I decided to play. I landed on this order after examining the Pokemon, and I really think that Regirock has a significant advantage over the other 2. For base stats, it has 80 HP and 50 speed. I'm mentioning these 2 first because both Registeel and Regice also share these values. The other 4 stats is where all of the variation occurs. For Regirock, it has 100 attack, 200 defense, 50 special attack, and 100 special defense. High attack is obviously beneficial because then I'm going to be one-hitting more targets, and low special attack is great because a rock-type Pokemon really doesn't want to use special moves. 200 defense is definitely overkill, but it'll really help against Steven Stone at the end of the game. It is worth noting that Regirock doesn't resist rock moves itself, and it will take super effective damage from Steven's steel-type moves. However, with such an incredible defense stat and a good move pool to back it up, I don't think we'll have problems at the end of the game. Also, base 100 special defense is great to shore up my weaknesses to water and grass types. After 3 videos where Ludicolo has been a serious threat, I think we just might be able to get by it this time without problems. So now let's go through Regirock's move pool. Through level up, it gets access to Rock Throw at level 9, Curse at 17, Super Power at 25, Ancient Power at 33, and from there the moves are not going to be particularly useful. Iron Defense is nice, but Curse just does that job better. Knowing that I'm going to be relying on Curse, which drops my speed every time I use it, I figured that I could go for a Nature that also lowers my speed stat and increases my attack. So for this playthrough, my Regirock has a Brave Nature. Getting back to the move pool, Regirock has access to some useful coverage. Thunderbolt and Shockwave probably aren't going to be useful because they're special, but Earthquake, Dig, and Brick Break are definitely going to be viable, as well as the standard normal type moves, Secret Power, and Return. Now, Regirock's best same type attack bonus move is Ancient Power, so today I'm going to give it Hidden Power Rock so that it has another option which has slightly higher base power. Plus, I'm pretty sure that all of you would be frustrated with me if I just searched for Omni Boosts everywhere to solve problems. Actually, speaking of problems, Regirock has to go up against Roxanne right away, and the only move it learns until 17 is Rock Throw. The Rock type does not resist itself, so Regirock will take neutral damage from her Rock type moves, but because she has two Geodude, which are also paired with the Ground typing, her Pokemon will resist my attacks. Knowing these interactions, I did not feel confident fighting her now. Instead, I'm going to skip the gym and head north of Rustboro City to do some additional training. At the end of this area, I could face Hiker Clark, who has a single Geodude, and I figured he would be a good litmus test to see if I was ready to face Roxanne at level 13. And I am nowhere near close to being able to face Roxanne because the Geodude is taking so little damage from Rock Throw. Plus, it starts setting up Defense Curl, taking even less damage from every hit, and then my fourth attack misses. As a result of this miss, I run out of Rock Throw PP, and the only other option I have is Explosion. You might wonder why I have PP in this move, and that is because I healed at a Pokemon Center. I didn't want to arbitrarily set Explosion's PP to 0 after I had obtained Rock Throw. That just felt like cheating. I'm going to take the reset here and train on other people rather than Hiker Clark. The next person I decided to battle was Youngster Joey, who is not the Youngster Joey from Generation 2. This is a completely different guy, and he has a Machop. By the way, this Machop knows Low Kick, and it is of course too much for Regirock, giving me my second reset of the playthrough. I think I might have been a little bit overconfident saying that this thing was going to get the best results. I really hope that Registeel and Regice are going to be better than this. If I can't battle the trainers in this area, then I'll fight wild Pokemon. After all, grinding here does come with an advantage. Occasionally I'll run into an Abra, and if I can catch one, then I'll speed up my progress in the overworld with the move Teleport. I train to level 16, which takes a good amount of time, and then I go into the gym to face the trainers and see how Rock Throw is doing now. Unfortunately, the damage ranges do not give me confidence, so I decide to go back, train up to 17, where Regirock learns Curse. If I can't beat Roxanne with this move, Regirock is truly a terrible Pokemon, so let's jump into the first gym battle. The first Geodude is going to set up Defense Curl with a decent frequency, so I figured that I could just spam Curse against it until I get to +6 attack. I should also mention here that lowering my speed with Curse actually is advantageous because then the Geodude as well as the Nose Pass are going to be less likely to use Rock Tomb. This is because the AI views the move as speed control. I should also mention here that all three of the Regis have the ability Clear Body. It prevents your stats from being lowered by the opponent in battle. So Regirock's speed stat is being lowered when I use Curse because it's using the move on itself. I should mention one special case with Clear Body, and that's the fact that it doesn't allow your accuracy to be lowered. Believe me, that is going to be very important when I start facing Mightyena. Okay, so as you would predict, with +6, Regirock sweeps through Roxanne's team and earns itself an easy first badge. With it comes a 10% boost to my attack stat and the TM for Rock Tomb, which is unfortunately completely useless with Regirock because Rock Throw has the same base power and 10% more accuracy. The second run I completed was Regice. For base stats, it has 50 attack, 100 defense, 100 special attack, and 200 special defense. It essentially has the same stat distribution as Regirock, but in this case the higher values are given to its special stats and the lower values to its physical stats. And that really makes a lot of sense because all ice-type moves in Generation 3 deal special damage. At level 9, Regice gets access to Icy Wind, which has base 55 power and 95% accuracy. Honestly, a much better starting move than Rock Throw, 5 more base power and 5% more accuracy. Through level up, its set has a lot less synergy. Curse isn't as useful because I'm not going to be using as many physical attacks. Superpower and Ancient Power are both physical, and Amnesia boosts its already incredible special defense. I felt lowering this stat with my nature was fine, so I chose a Rash Nature to boost my special attack. Through TM and HM, Regice gets access to Ice Beam, Thunderbolt, Shockwave, and I've also given it Hidden Power Fire for a little bit of special coverage. I thought that starting at level 11, I would likely be able to beat Roxanne. After all, I have super effective damage against the Geodudes, so I can one-shot both of them. That said, this approach gets risky because once I make it to the Nose Pass, Rock Tomb is going to do a lot of damage. But what I'm relying on here is my knowledge of how the AI chooses Rock Tomb. As I said before, it is a speed control move, so if Regice can survive one hit, which it can, then the Nose Pass is going to choose its other moves, which are not going to do much damage, giving me the time I need to knock out Roxanne's ace. If that felt like a dominant fight to you, let's go and watch some footage of Registeel. Its base stats balance out Regirock and Regis. It has 75 attack and special attack and 150 defense and special defense. As the first and only mono steel type before Generation 5, this thing has incredible resistances. Because of that, Steven is not going to be much of a threat in the late game, so I decided to lower my defense and increase my attack with a lonely nature. Its level up learn set is almost identical to the other two. In this case, it gets Metal Claw at level 9. By the way, this move has a 10% chance to raise your attack stat. And then at level 41, it learns both Iron Defense and Amnesia. Through TM and HM, it gets access to some notable moves: Thunderbolt, Earthquake, Brick Break, Shockwave, Rock Tomb, and Aerial Ace. Today I've assigned it a Steel type hidden power so that it at least gets a decent same type attack bonus move. Like Regice, I felt comfortable facing Roxanne right away using Metal Claw. It's super effective against her Pokemon, but they are physically defensive, so it's taking 2 hits to knock the Geodude out. That said, because of my Steel typing, I take very little damage from her. And with that, all 3 Pokemon have cleared the first gym leader. Regis is in the lead by only 19 seconds, with Registeel closely following it. Regirock is a completely different story though, because it significantly trails the other 2. Continuing with Registeel, I would prefer to not teach it Rock Tomb, but I think having a little bit extra coverage does make sense. There's an optional rival battle in Rustboro City, which is an Emerald exclusive, and today with all 3 of the Regis, I am going to be doing it just for a little bit more experience. Right now the rival isn't a threat because his starter hasn't evolved, but don't worry, that is going to change soon. Next I set sail for Dewford Island, and here I am going to have to make a choice, and that is if I want to face Brawly. After all 3 of the Regis are weak to fighting type moves. Upon arriving in Dewford Town, I pick up the Silk Scarf and then I go into Granite Cave and deliver the letter to Steven Stone. Just in case you're unfamiliar with Pokemon Emerald or there are some new viewers in the audience, you are able to skip Brawly until after you defeat Flannery. It isn't possible to battle him after Norman because the doors in the 5th gym will not open until you have 4 badges. I'm going to take advantage of this fact with Registeel and just skip Brawly entirely, heading north to Mauville City through Slateport City. In the surrounding area, I continue battling trainers for levels because the rival is coming up next and he has a Combuskin, and I'm not feeling particularly good about facing it. At level 21 there aren't trainers left to face, so I decided I should just take the rival on and rely on Curse. Of course, his first Pokemon is Wingull, so I can set up. While it does confuse me, I'm not really worried about that because I'm setting up my defense at the same time as my attack. However, after hitting itself several times and taking some damage from the Wingull, I really don't have much health left over when the Combuskin comes out. Okay, please survive the Ember. In this case, Registeel does, and that allows me to hit with Rock Tomb, which gets a critical hit, finishing his ace off. Alright, so the Lombre is last. I do only have 11 hit points, but this thing is really bad. It goes for Astonish, dealing a single hit point of damage. And while Rock Tomb does fail to get the knockout and also misses, the Lombre's next attack, which crits, only does 4 hit points of damage, so my Steel type survives and I take a victory. With most Pokemon, in the regions around Mauville City, I do a lot of training, but with Registeel, I don't think it needs that, so instead I head straight for the gym, defeating Wally, and then I use the single rare candy that I've obtained until this point to level up from 24 to 25, where Registeel learns the move Superpower. Before we jump into the fight with the Electric Specialist, I'll just bring up the Bulbapedia page for this move in case you're unsure of how it works. It feels like it's a fairly rare move, and I haven't utilized it a lot in my playthroughs previously. It has 120 base power, 100% accuracy, and 5 PP. However, this move does come with a downside because whenever the Pokemon uses it, both its attack and defense will be lowered by 1 stage. In this way, it feels similar to close combat, but it is really annoying that it also ruins your attacking stat whenever you use it. Luckily for me, all of the Regis also have access to a move that boosts both your attack and defense stat. So now that we understand Superpower, let's face Watson. His first Pokemon is Voltorb. I go for Superpower right away to ensure that I knock it out so that it's not going to paralyze me with Spark. After all, that move's secondary effect has a 30% chance to inflict the status condition. Next is Electrike, and the only way that it can paralyze you is with Static, and that gives me time to set up Curse, regaining back my lost attack and defense. You'll notice here that Electrike is going for Howl, and I want to talk about how attack boosting moves work in combination with the AI. So if the AI gets to +3 or higher, it is very unlikely that it's going to go for another turn of setup. However, if it's under that threshold, then it's going to have a higher chance of doing this, so the Electrike is generally not going to attack very much during this battle. As a result, I know that I can take my time here. I set up to +3, and I figured that this would be enough. Rock Tomb doesn't make contact, so it doesn't risk Static, and I knock the Electrike out, moving on to the Magneton. I still have my Cherry Berry countering Thunder Wave on turn 1, allowing Registeel to use Superpower, knocking the Steel type out. Next is Manectric, and the same AI logic applies to it here, so it's probably going to be using Howl a decent amount, especially if I'm slower than it. As a result, I'm able to use Superpower, and that's that for Watson. Registeel earns itself a 26-minute and 51-second Watson split. Okay, let's continue our rotation through the Pokemon and return to Regirock. In this case, I am facing the optional rival in Rustboro City, and this fight gets kind of close. I end with only 12 hit points remaining, but a win is a win. Once I reach Dewford Island and I deliver the letter to Stephen Stone, I made the decision to go into the gym because Regirock has incredible defense, and I thought that setup with Curse would allow me to defeat Brawly. As I'm wandering through the dark of his gym, I just want to mention that none of the Reggies can learn Bulk Up. As a result, in retrospect, I do not think there is a good reason to be attempting him now. But that's not the decision I made when I did this playthrough, so let's jump into the battle. Machop is first, and I'm going to set up Curse here, increasing both my attack and my defense. The Machop also generally sets up, but it also knows Low Kick and Karate Chop, and I do not want to see either of those when using Regirock. Also, as my defense gets set up, I don't want to see Seismic Toss because it deals fixed damage. By the time I knock the Machop out, I only have 7 hit points left. That said, the Meditite likes to use Focus Punch, so it's free, but the Makuhita on the other hand isn't. That said, it does know Vital Throw, meaning it has lowered priority. That allows Regirock to move first, but Rock Throw doesn't KO, and as a result, the Makuhita knocks me out. I tried the fight again, but no, this isn't working, so I'm gonna set sail for Slateport Beach. Once I arrive, I pick up the soft sand as well as an ether and a heart scale, and then I immediately complete the museum and head north of the city. The rival's next. When his starter is the grass type Pokemon, then he leads with Slugma, and while it does know Yawn, which puts Regirock to sleep, I set up with Curse twice, eventually wake up and finish it off. I feel like I'm in a really good position now. He sends in Wingull next because it's a water type. It goes for Water Gun, it doesn't do very much, and then I finish it off with Rock Throw. Okay, it's time for the Grovyle. I don't expect it to be problematic here. After all, it only has Absorb. Later on in the playthrough, it will know Leaf Blade. The weaker grass type move doesn't do very much, so goodbye, Brendan. Mirroring what we just saw with Registeel, I'm not going to do too many additional battles before facing Watson. However, I am going to use the move tutor that exists in Mauville City. He's this guy by the gym. He can be used to teach your Pokemon Rollout. I figured I'd mention it, but it's not going to be that useful with Regirock. Also, because I had to do extensive training for Roxanne, I don't need to use a rare candy before facing Watson in order to get Superpower. Because of Regirock's higher attack stat, I only set up Curse once, and then I decided to sweep his team. In retrospect, I don't think this was the best choice. If I had set up, say, 2 more times, I would have one-shot the Manectric, and because of that, things wouldn't have been as close as they end up being. But still, Regirock pulls through and earns itself a Watson split of 33 minutes and 26 seconds. Regice doesn't have problems with Brendan in Rustboro City, and then on Dewford Island, because of its lower defense stat, I made the choice to skip Brawly right away. Of the 3, a high special attack stat and Icy Wind pair together very well in the early game. Also, this move is great at countering Lass Robin's team because I have super effective damage against her Mighty Shroomish. I do some additional training, bringing Regice up to 21 before I face the rival. Now, this fight is kind of unfortunate. I have used the move tutor to teach teach Regice swagger. I'm going to be going for this against the Combuskin because there is no way for me to set up with Curse. After all, my only physical move is Explosion and I can't use it. Luckily for me, the fire type damages itself on the first turn, but then it snaps out of confusion and sets up focus energy after my first Icy Wind. I get one more in and I thought it was going to knock out, but it doesn't. Combuskin then strikes back with double kick, doing enough damage to finish my ice type off. This fight is sort of random. I'll just continue to go for swagger until I get the luck I need. And it doesn't happen in the next fight, so that is a second reset. I wish I could say that third time is the charm, but no, the fiery chicken defeats my legendary. So I'm gonna head back to Slateport Beach and do some additional training to level Regice up a little bit more. Actually, not just a little more, all the way to 24, where I'm gonna use a rare candy to get superpower. Now I have a physical move that deals neutral damage to Combuskin, and I can hopefully use it without curse setup and two-shot. In this case, I get a lucky critical hit and his ace goes down. Alright, so next is Watson. Just like the other two Reggies, I approached him with minimal training. Of course here, Curse in combination with Superpower gives Regice a simple victory. Coming out of the Watson split, here is the comparison between the three. Surprisingly, the Ice type has fallen behind and the Steel type is in the lead. This is really not what I was expecting, and I would have to say at this point in the runs that the play order is largely impacting these differences. Regirock could have had a faster split if I didn't waste time trying to fight Brawly, and Registeel is likely outperforming because it was played last of the three. That said, Regice did struggle against the second rival, and it doesn't really have a good solution for him other than grinding to level 25 to gain access to superpower. And unfortunately for the Ice type, things are going to continue to be fairly bad because the next gym leader is Flannery. Now, defeating Watson and earning the Dynamo badge did give me a speed boost, which is helpful for these slow Pokemon, but it also gives me the Shockwave TM, which Regice can use. It's really nice to finally have a second special move. After journeying all the way to Meteor Falls, I backtrack to Mount Chimney, where I have to face Maxie. This is the first prominent battle in the run against a Mightyena, and here Clear Body is very helpful because it prevents Intimidate from lowering Regice's attack. Also, I can use Superpower to knock out the Dark type with super effective damage, and then I can use Icy Wind to two-shot the Camerupt, and Shockwave to finish off the Zubat. As I head into Lavaridge Town, I will mention that I did do additional training before this area, but still Regice is only level 32 by the time it arrives at Flannery. I was pretty worried about this one. Let me show you how it went. Up first is Numel, and you can see that I'm being a little bit indecisive here, maybe wanting to set up Curse, but eventually I decide to go for Icy Wind, and unfortunately it does not knock out. Instead of choosing Overheat, Numel goes for Takedown, then she uses a potion, and I'm able to polish it off with 2 more Icy Winds. Next is Camerupt. Surprisingly again, her AI selects a normal type move instead of Overheat, so it feels to me like Regice is getting pretty lucky. Slugma is more annoying than usual. It goes for Smog, poisoning Regice, which is quite frustrating, especially when she has another Hyper Potion to stall me out. Last is Torkoal. I go for Superpower against it first turn, but this does almost nothing. And finally, a Fire type selects Overheat, melting Regice away. Okay, so the solution here is fairly simple. If I go back into the gym, fight some more trainers, and level up, I can get to level 33, where Regice can learn Ancient Power. Well, I actually ran out of trainers in the gym, so I had to go back up to the little route and use my Acrobike to ascend the ledges. Then here, I can defeat trainers, level up to 33, and teach Ancient Power in the place of Superpower. The question is, will the Rock move do better damage to Flannery's Pokemon? And against Numel, the answer is no, but I get an Omni Boost first turn, which is perfect. I continue using Ancient Power in the hopes of getting another one, but it doesn't work out against the Camerupt. Still, the Rock type move can one-shot the Slugma, and I move on to the Torkoal. Her ace goes for Overheat, doing decent damage, but it looks like I have enough health after an Oranberry to survive one more. I use Icy Wind, lowering it to yellow health. It sets up Sunny Day because it wasn't already on the field, and that gives me the time I need to polish her ace off. Earning the heat badge wasn't nearly as difficult as I thought it was going to be. I backtracked through the middle of the map, grabbing a rare candy in the desert, and then strength in Rust Turf Tunnel. After obtaining this HM, I have to backtrack to Slateport City because Mr. Briny's location is fixed here, and I am going to have to use his ship to get back to Dewford Island in order to open up Norman's gym. If anyone's watching in the background and totally misses where the brawly fights are, here is one of them. It's very quick, with Regice being extremely overleveled at this point. With him out of the way, I head to Petalburg City, where I face Norman. His first Pokemon is Spinda, and as long as you're holding the Person Berry, you can set up for free until it confuses you, which generally is quite early because it has Teeter Dance. In this case, I push the setup a little bit further to get to +3 attack with Regice, and then with the first Ancient Power I use, I get the Omni Boost, so yeah, that's pretty lucky. I will take it though, and as a result, this battle against Norman is going to be quite simple. At least that's what I was expecting. Then Slacking uses Yawn, and Regice falls asleep, so it takes some damage from his ace. While I am able to finish it off, I come through that portion of the battle with only 30 hit points left, and my speed is ruined from my setup with Curse. Vigoroth is obviously faster, doing 6 hit points of damage with Facade. Okay, I did think that was going to be more, but it gets to attack a second time, taking me down to red health. Last is Linoon. It uses Facade, doesn't do enough, and Regice crits for the win. Alright, so that was a really lucky battle. I would not have won if I didn't get the Omni Boost from Ancient Power, and I also think that Curse setup there wasn't necessarily the best choice with my current set. It definitely would have worked better if I had held on to Superpower for a longer period of time. With the 5th badge, I get a defense boost, but I also gain access to Surf, and I can now head to the abandoned ship, pick up the TM for Ice Beam, and finally I have a reliable same type attack bonus move. That said, I can also talk to Watson in Mauville City after completing a brief side quest and earn myself the TM for Thunderbolt. This is where Regice's moveset changes dramatically. Icy Wind to Ice Beam, Ancient Power to Thunderbolt, and Curse to Hidden Power Fire. I'll show you the battle against the rival's Combuskin. Using Thunderbolt, it's going to be a 2-shot, and the Fire Chicken just sets up with Bulk Up. With him cleared out, the next major battle is Winona, and what do you expect? I have Ice Beam and Thunderbolt. I am easily going to sweep her team. I guess it's a bit annoying that the Skarmory is surviving my hits, but it doesn't matter. I also use Hidden Power Fire against the Tropius, which is much worse than Ice Beam. That said, the Pelipper does not use Protect, so I gain back a little bit of time. Of course, Altaria goes down to a single hit, and with that I've earned myself the 6th badge. Okay, I think we're getting a little ahead of ourselves with Regice. Let's switch back to Registeel and see how it does after Watson. The first choice I had to make was if I would teach Shockwave or not, but in this case I think hanging on to it and using it later might be the better play. After all, my attack is boosted right now and my special attack is not. Plus, if I hold on to 3 physical moves, then Curse can boost to all of them. Okay, so we have recently found a tricky trainer, Lass Robin, but I'm going to show you another tricky trainer. After clearing the fiery path, there is this guy. His name is Cool Trainer Wilton, and he is positioned right before the Secret Power TM. His first Pokemon is Electrike, which of course has Static and Thunder Wave, which is perfect to paralyze your Pokemon. Then, the Makuhita that follows is super effective against all 3 of the Reggies, plus it knows Sand Attack and Focus Energy. Today he sends out Wailmer last, and by the time it comes out, I'm at 18 hit points and Registeel is paralyzed. I honestly thought I was going to have to black out here and go back because I have not saved since Watson. That said, the Wailmer is kind of bad. It has Splash on its set and Water Gun doesn't do that much damage. As a result, when I hit with Superpower, it goes down. That was a close call. With that out of the way, I pick up the TM for Secret Power. By the way, this now means the TM shop is open for business in Slateport City. I decided not to backtrack for it right away because Hidden Power Steel is not useful against Flannery. As I fight Maxie with Registeel, I'm just going to set a precedent for the rest of this video. I will not be mentioning any of the subsequent battles with him, with Matt, or with Archie, just because Clear Body really makes all of their teams fail to function effectively. The Mightyena can't do anything with Sand Attack or Intimidate. If you have a Person Berry, then later on it'll just give you a free swagger. So yeah, this fight's really easy, and that's enough of Maxi for this video. Hitting down the volcano into Lava Ridge Town, I'm going to have another tricky battle against Flannery with Registeel. In this case, my best damage is Superpower, which is really unfortunate. I figured I could set up with Curse and then maybe one-shot the Nummel and Slugma with Rock Tomb, but it does so little damage, so I continue my Curse setup until I have +4, and then I knock her lead out. By the way, she really doesn't like to use Overheat after she lowers her special attack, so at least that is a silver lining, but unfortunately for me, in this battle I don't even make it by the Camerupt. Instead of relying on Rock Tomb, I can teach Secret Power in its place so that at least I have neutral damage with base 70 power. Still, after one curse, this is not enough to knock the Nummel out, so it gets an Overheat in, and then I use Curse. After that, it finally gets knocked out. I finish off the Slugma because my Reggie is faster even after 2 uses of Curse. Then Camerupt comes in, it goes for Overheat, but Registeel survives, paralyzes with Secret Power, and knocks it out on the next turn. So I have made it to the Torque Hole. I was really banking on Superpower doing a little bit more damage here, but of course the turtle Pokemon has a lot of defense, so that's another reset. Now, despite the fact that I had more experience with Registeel, I got a little bit stubborn here and kept trying. I figured that Curse was eventually going to be the solution that I needed, but no, it's not. After 3 more resets, I go back up the mountain, do additional training, leveling up to 33 to gain access to Ancient Power. The thing is, while this move is nice, it is not really a solution because Registeel continues to reset over and over and over again. At some point, I just expected that the way I was going to win was with the Torkoal missing an Overheat. In this case, it chooses Body Slam on its first turn, which does paralyze. However, it just goes for the normal move again and I finish it off. So that is an unsatisfying win, and it took me 8 resets to get by the Fire-type specialist. The Steel type is now 5.5 minutes behind Regice. Right now, things are very back and forth between these 3, and that's perfect for the inaugural Emerald version versus video. And don't worry, throughout the next year, I'm going to be making more of these. After all, there are many highly requested matches. On my way backtracking to Brawley, I pick up the Hidden Power TM and I teach it to Registeel in the place of Metal Claw. Against neutral targets, I now have an effective power of 105, and I don't have a downside like Superpower's attack and defense drop. Okay, blink and you'll miss it, Brawley. And now with 4 badges, Registeel is ready to face Norman. Remember what I was saying about the fact that if I had Curse and Superpower together, that this fight would be really simple? Yeah, it is. I set up to +2, Hidden Power Steel knocks out the Spinda, then he sends in Slacking. I go for Curse on the first turn just because it could use counter. Registeel hits itself. It takes a little while for things to line up for me, but finally it's loafing around and I can use Superpower to knock his ace out in a single hit. From there, I just clean up the Vigoroth and the Linoon and earn myself a quick and easy 5th badge. Unlike Regice, Registeel does not get a significant moveset upgrade in the next portion of the game. While it can learn Thunderbolt and I do pick up the TM, I'm not going to teach it right away. I head north, crushing the rival into Fort Tree City, and then I go up against Winona. Ancient Power one-shots the Swablu, then I set up Curse 2 times against Altaria while it uses Dragon Dance and polish it off with Ancient Power. The Rock-type move continues its spree against Tropius, but for Skarmory, things of course slow down. When it finally faints, Pelipper is last, and it actually survives one of my hits, which is a little bit surprising. Annoying bird. Anyways, I polish it off, and with that, let's switch back to Regirock. Okay, I am journeying up Mount Chimney because, as I said before about Maxi, that is not actually true at all. There is still one way he can mess us up, and that is if the Camerupt burns me with Ember, which is exactly what happens for Regirock, and as a result, it has a reset here. By the way, I may actually have to mention him one more time, which is extremely unfortunate. Anyways, with Maxi defeated for now, Regirock can move on to Flannery, where Where the other two struggled against her, the rock type definitely won't. It can learn Dig, which is a unique move among the trio, and it also has Rock Throw, which is neutral against her ground types and super effective against her mono fire types. Plus, all of my moves are physical, so boosting my damage with Curse makes a lot of sense, and I resist her fire type moves. Yeah, obviously she doesn't win, I get a first attempt victory. I teach Hidden Power Rock in the place of Rock Throw, crush Brawly, face Norman. Of course, Regirock is really great here. I'm actually at low health by the time the slacking comes out, but it just doesn't matter. And with that, I move on to the rival just outside of Fort Tree City. This is the first time that his Grovyle has Leaf Blade, and I should draw your attention to the fact that my Regirock has 49 speed at the beginning of this battle. The Grovyle has 69, which is not nice for me. There's no way for Regirock to move first. I set up with Curse to boost my damage, and after 2 turns, I figured this would be enough. Okay, so will I survive a Leaf Blade? And the answer is yes, with more than half health. I polish off the grass type in a single hit from Hidden Power, and with that, Regirock is ready to face Winona. Swablu, Hidden Power, one shot, obviously. Next is Tropius, the irrelevant grass type. Hidden Power, once again, one shots. I go for Curse because of course Pelipper is going to protect, but no, it chooses Supersonic. Luckily, it misses. And not just once, but twice, giving me the free knockout. She chooses Altaria next, which I'm not really sure why. It goes for Dragon Dance and then gets KO'd, leaving only her Skarmory. Because of Regirock's incredibly high base defense, as well as my boost from Curse, a super effective Steel Wing is doing almost nothing, and 2 Hidden Powers later, I have the 6th badge. Okay, so now let's look at the standings, and Regirock has once again gained the lead. All 3 of our Pokemon have had it at some point, and so again, this is a really close race. The next section of the playthrough gives access to so many rare candies. Just so everyone's aware, by the time the player is ready to face Tate and Liza, you will have a total of 13. Of course, collecting all of these requires a lot of overworld navigation. I get taken all the way down to Pacifidlog Town to grab the last one, but this fly point is useful later on in the plot line. I crush through the trainers in the 7th gym, and then I have to prepare for my battle against 2 Pokemon at once. With Regirock, I wasn't sure if I should use my rare candies at this point or not. In the end, I did decide to use a total of 11 to bring it up to level 53 before the battle. 2 questions linger in my mind. Was this premature, and will it be enough to get me through Tate and Liza? Their first 2 Pokemon are Xatu and Claydol. I go for Return, targeting the Claydol. My goal here is to knock it out over 2 turns because it has super effective damage in the form of Earthquake. That said, with the damage I did, I wasn't sure if they were going to use a Hyper Potion and decided to target the Xatu, but because Regirock is confused, it hits itself, Psychic does a lot, and things just kind of spiral out of control. I tried again, but my Chesto Berry as a held item is not helping me out, so I decided to switch for a Person Berry after my second reset. The idea was to prevent Xatu's confusion, making the beginning of the battle just a little bit more consistent. That said, it just doesn't go for Confuse Ray, and so I feel really silly with a held item that isn't doing anything. I'm able to make it past their first 2 Pokemon onto the Solrock and Lunatone. I target the latter of these because it knows Hypnosis, but it doesn't matter either way because the Solrock is still going to get a hit in with Solar Beam, which is enough to finish my Rock type. The reason I lost that fight was because I didn't have enough health, so I'm going to teach Rest in the place of Superpower and try again with a slightly more stall-oriented strategy. I can set up with Curse early on so that Claydol's Earthquake does very little damage. Then I can use Hidden Power Rock before it hits with a Calm Mind boosted Psychic. Hidden Power Rock continues being neutral against their 2 rock types, so I can focus down the Solrock as well as the Lunatone, and then, at long last, I can polish off the Claydol. That was a bumpy fight for Regirock, and Juan is coming up next, so maybe it's gonna continue struggling. I really hope not. But you know which Pokemon is not going to struggle against a Water-type specialist? Regice. Its incredible special defense paired with Thunderbolt should give it an easy victory over the 8th gym leader, but to get there, it first has to defeat Tate and Liza. I want to start this fight off by drawing your attention to the fact that their rock types do not have access to a rock type move, which is incredibly good for Regice. The Solrock does no flamethrower, which is super effective, but that is contending with Regice's incredible special defense. My strategy for this battle was to target the Xatu down to prevent Confuse Ray early on, then to target the Claydol, preventing it from using further earthquakes. Solrock sets up Sunny Day, and then they send in Lunatone. Of course, I'm not going to target it even though it knows Hypnosis, because I want to prevent Solrock from using Flamethrower as soon as possible. By doing that, I am exposed to the Lunatone's Hypnosis, and of course, they put Regice to sleep, and that gives me a reset. I was feeling fairly confident with Regice's late game just because of its move diversity, so I boosted it to level 50 with 5 rare candies. I also adjusted my strategy in this battle to instead target the Lunatone. While it does have more special defense than Solrock, I figured avoiding Hypnosis was of higher priority. Also, Flamethrower is a special move, and it's not doing that much. Even when it burns Regice, it's not enough for them to take a victory. Contrasting the previous two, Registeel just sort of stomps Tate and Liza with great ease. This is because I can use Curse to set up my defenses, Ancient Power to one-shot the Xatu. This gives me an Omni boost. Because of that, I am once again faster than their rock types and can easily one-shot using Hidden Power Steel. This entire time the Claydol is chipping away at me, but it's just not doing enough damage, so that's an easy victory for the Steel type. This has helped it close the gap with the other two. It is now 7 minutes and 23 seconds behind the lead Pokemon, which is now Regice, because Regirock really struggled with Tate and Liza, and because of that it is only 4 minutes and 41 seconds ahead of Registeel. While things were looking up for a moment, there is a battle with Maxie in the Space Center, and yes, this is the one that I need to mention. The enemy's combined team has 2 Camerupt, and these no Earthquake. Also, they like to spam Swagger, and this ends up undoing Registeel. This is just a player mistake though, it isn't related to Registeel as a Pokemon, because when I have a Persim Berry, then it can stomp them. Okay, so let's get all of these Pokemon to the Elite Four. The first step is defeating Juan. Of course, I can use a Persim Berry here once again to set up with Curse until the Love Disc confuses me, which is basically right away. I tried to knock it out with Ancient Power, but it's not doing enough damage, so I go for one more Curse while he switches into his Whiscash, which is fairly dangerous because this thing does no Earthquake. I decided to go for Superpower to knock it out in a single hit. Love Disc comes back in, I polish it off, and he sends in Celio. I thought that Ancient Power being super effective would be enough, but the Celio hangs on with the tiniest amount of red health. Okay, I'm going to set up Curse again. The Superpower debuff is what caused me not to get that one-hit range. Crawdaunt follows, it does some damage with Crabhammer, and then he sends in his ace, Kingdra. I figured that Superpower might do enough, but it doesn't, so the Kingdra is able to heal, and now my attack stat is lower. I'm trying to use other moves, but Double Team ends up foiling me. The experience from the first fight informs how I approach the subsequent attempts, this time setting up to +4 against the Love Disc. However, that ends up being a little bit challenging because it does confuse me, and by the time Juan's lead faints, I have just over half health. Without using Superpower, the Whiscash is a 2-hit. Luckily, it loves to set up Amnesia, so it doesn't really matter, well, unless he uses a Hyper Potion, and then hits me with Earthquake, bringing Registeel under half health. With +4 attack, Celio is obviously a one-hit, but Crawdaunt is faster, so it's able to hit me with 2 Crabhammers due to a Hyper Potion, and I have only 19 hit points remaining when Kingdra comes out. Obviously, this is another reset. However, I'm fairly sure that I just got unlucky against the Love Disc with Confusion. Okay, in the third battle, it confuses me first turn again, but this time I get to +4 with significantly more health, and from there, I'm able to sweep through his team, making it back to the Kingdra with green health. Ancient Power does more than half. I didn't want to put it in healing range. Then it goes for Water Pulse, which Registeel easily survives, and I polish it off with a Superpower. This gives Registeel a final gym split of 1 hour, 34 minutes, and 2 seconds. Of course, I have to crush Wally next. He's very easy. And then before the Elite Four, I head back to the move reminder to give Registeel access to Amnesia. I teach it in the place of Superpower because I don't think that move is going to be particularly useful from here on out. Regirock is up next, and Juan has the potential to be challenging here because water-type moves are super effective. That said, I can set up on the love disc, and this time I get to +2, which is significantly better than Registeel because of Regirock's higher base attack. Plus I have the same type attack bonus with Hidden Power Rock, and so I'm able to one-shot the love disc, the Celio, and the Crawdaunt. Next he chooses his ace Kingdra, and surprisingly, Regirock survives its water pulse with decent health. And then Hidden Power Rock comes through with the damage range required for the knockout. Okay, I did not expect this. Whiscash is last, Hidden Power Rock takes it to yellow health, it goes for Water Pulse, Regirock survives on 7 hit points and takes a first attempt victory. It gets a final gym split of 1 hour 25 minutes and 57 seconds. Its lead over Registeel has almost doubled, now being a total of 8 minutes and 5 seconds. Okay, so I had a little bit of good luck there, but don't worry, the bad luck is incoming. I have Hidden Power Rock against Wally's Magneton, and I chose not to set up at the beginning of the fight. Then he uses a full restore, healing the electric steel type to full health. I need 3 more hits for the knockout, so that means it has time to use Supersonic, and Regirock hits itself, plus takes damage from Thunderbolt. Wally's ace, of course, is Gardevoir, and by the time it comes out, I have very little health remaining. Regirock hits itself in confusion, and the Psychic type takes my Rock type out. It's always really painful losing in this battle, because generally Wally is not a very good trainer. I am glad to report, though, that I am not going to lose for a second time because I can set up with Curse and then sweep through his team. I didn't think Regirock needed any moveset changes or item changes for the league, so it is ready to go. But first, we need to catch up with Regice. Of course, Juan is first, and I have Thunderbolt, so I'm pretty sure I can just sweep his team. Against Whiscash, I can use Ice Beam. I take a little bit of damage from Earthquake, but overall it's irrelevant. Celio goes down to a single Thunderbolt, as well as the following Crawdaunt, and then for the Kingdra, I can use Ice Beam. While it does use Rest and burn its Chesto Berry, it just immediately rests again, and then it has to sleep, giving me what is essentially a free win. That's a final gym split of 1 hour 23 minutes and 22 seconds. But things are still close because the Ice type only leads by 2 minutes and 36 seconds. Wally is no issue with Regice, and now we are ready to jump into the Elite Four. First is Sydney, and Regice pairs very well against his team. I've kept Shockwave, not because the Mightyena can use Sand Attack, but because the Shift Tree can set up with Double Team. That said, in retrospect, this doesn't make a lot of sense, because Ice Beam is just going to one-hit anyways. Well, actually, the Shift Tree is faster by 4 speed, so maybe it makes sense to have Shockwave. Either way, the Grass type just goes for Torment, and then I knock it out. I can't use Ice Beam again, but I do have Hidden Power Fire for the Cacturne, which gets the job done. Following that, I can easily use Shockwave to polish off the Crawdaunt. Phoebe is up next, and it's a little bit frustrating that I don't have anything to set up with. That said, I go for Hidden Power on turn 1, just so Dusclop's pressure doesn't lower the PP of Ice Beam or Thunderbolt. After that, I finish her lead off with 2 hits from Ice Beam. This is the better choice over Thunderbolt, just because I could freeze. I want the Dusclops to move as few turns as possible in the battle, just because if it uses Curse, it will be an instant loss. Beyond that, things get much easier. Her Ace Dusclops does no Rock Slide, but it has basically no attack. I finish it in 2 turns, and from there I slowly knock out her final 3 Pokemon. I do take some damage from the Sableye, but not enough to make me worried. Glacia is next, and 3 of her Pokemon are water types, so obviously Thunderbolt is great here. While I'm not able to one-hit the Walrein, I just paralyze and finish it off in essentially what is a one-hit. The second Celio surprisingly survives my next hit, but she just uses full restores until I knock it out. From there, all I have to do is finish off one Glalie, and then I move on to Drake, who, Drake. I didn't even heal for this battle, and that might have been a mistake, because the Salamence is fast, uses Rock Slide, and takes Regice down to red health. Okay, I was definitely overconfident here. The Altaria is also faster, hitting with Double Edge. I do survive, but Kingdra is faster as well, and it moves first, smashing the Golem into tiny ice shards. Okay, we're so close to the end of the game, it makes sense to use some rare candies now. I take Regice up from level 57 to 64 before facing Drake again. The level increases mean that I now have 116 speed, so I'm going to move first against the Altaria as well as the Kingdra. Only the Flygon and Salamence move first. Because of this, I have around half health for the final two Pokemon, but they can't move. Of course, Altaria is a one-hit, and the Kingdra is a two-hit. Well, it would have been if Drake didn't spam full restores. Before the champion, I give Regice a Chesto Berry, and then I teach it Rest in the place of Shockwave. Okay, let's do this. I think this is going to be an easy fight for the Ice type. And yes, it starts off that way with Thunderbolt one-shotting the Wailord. Next is Tentacruel, and it has 2 more speed than Regice, so it moves first and uses Toxic. Pretty annoying. I do have Rest, so I will be able to heal it at some point, but I definitely don't want to do that against the following Ludicolo, because this thing loves its double team. Instead, I prioritize Ice Beam, which comes through for me, getting a critical hit, and with that, the Trolley Pokemon is no more. Whiscash is next. It's probably just going to set up Amnesia a little bit. I can take my time here, heal with Rest, and then use Ice Beam to freeze the Whiscash. This doesn't give me the knockout though, because Wallace uses a full restore. However, the Water Ground type isn't doing a lot of damage, and I polish it off. Thunderbolt one-shots the Gyarados, and then 3-shots the following Milotic. Regice gets a penultimate split time of 1 hour 36 minutes and 12 seconds, with 6 resets at level 65 and a game time of 5 hours and 57 minutes. With Registeel, I misplay during the Sydney fight. I should have set up Curse one more time against the Mightyena after realizing that my damage range with Hidden Power Steel was not good enough. However, I just kept bashing my head against this wall, and it didn't really make a lot of sense. I take a ton of damage from the Crawdaunt before setting up Amnesia and then knocking it out. Of course, here, I should have been setting up right away to prevent the damage from Surf in the first place. After all, once the Crawdaunt goes down, the other Pokemon are not going to use special moves against me. Despite all of these mistakes, Registeel still pulls through on red health. Phoebe is a completely different story. If the first Dusclops goes for Curse, as I mentioned with Regice, then I am going to have a loss because I won't be able to knock out her Pokemon fast enough before the status condition polishes off my Solomon. I knew that Registeel wouldn't be able to one-shot it with +1, so going for +2 was to try to ensure the knockout when I go for it. Essentially, if I attack after +1, I'm not going to 2-hit and it can use Curse anyway. So I need to wait until luck aligns, and honestly, it just isn't happening. After a total of 4 resets, I decided to use my remaining rare candies. By the way, I previously used some before Tate and Liza, so I only have 5 left. This brings Registeel up to level 60 and hopefully will give it better damage ranges against the Dusclops. This time, I'm able to get set up to +2, my Persimberry cures Confusion, and then Hidden Power Steel knocks her lead out. From here, things are so much easier even though the Ace Dusclops has Earthquake. I sweep through her team and make it to Glacia. I play a little too aggressively in this fight, setting up only once with Curse, and then I'm also making a mistake choosing Hidden Power Steel when Ancient Power has a higher effective power. I was forgetting here that the water type resists the steel type. As a result, I have a kind of silly loss. For the next fight, I equip a Cherry Berry, giving me more time to set up with Amnesia and Curse against the first Celio. The held item counters Body Slam's Paralysis. From there, I continue making the same mistake, choosing Hidden Power Steel instead of Ancient Power. But that's why I do these first playthroughs. It gives me a chance to figure out how to play the Pokemon well. Something that was completely outside of my control is the fact that the Glalie freezes me, and this causes another reset. Don't worry though, I'm able to defeat her on my 3rd attempt, even though I am still using Hidden Power. Okay, Drake is next, and Registeel has a completely different approach here when compared with Regice. I'm gonna set up Amnesia turn 1 on the Shelgon so that Dragon Claw does very little damage. Then, I am going to max out my attack and defense using Curse. Also, the Shelgon was dealing so little damage to me that I decided to go back and finish my setup with Amnesia before moving on with the rest of his team. Registeel's stats are ludicrous at this point. I have 937 special defense and 844 physical defense. Granted, its attack is only 638, but that is still going to be enough for me to sweep his team. All that's left now is to defeat Wallace. I figured the setup situation here would be fairly similar. I can max out my special defense using Amnesia right away against the Whale Lord so that it's dealing very little damage. By the way, the AI selects the move that does the most damage, so we know how little Water Spout is doing when it starts to select Double Edge. One flaw with the strategy incorporating both Amnesia and Curse into the same set is that I don't have space to add Rest. This means that all damage Registeel takes is going to be permanent, much like a Protoss unit with hull damage. As I approached half health against the Whale Lord, I was getting a little bit antsy and wanted to knock it out, but I think this is a mistake. More setup would have reduced the damage Whiscash's Earthquake was dealing, and I also clearly needed better damage ranges against this thing because Hidden Power Steel, which is resisted, is just not cutting it. I think there is a much more obvious way to play this battle, and that is to get a little bit more generic. I teach Rest in the place of Ancient Power and Return in the place of Hidden Power. With this set, it genuinely feels like Wallace can't do anything to Registeel. I just set up with Amnesia, set up with Curse, then I heal, and from there, even though I do take damage every turn because I'm so slow, it just doesn't matter. I can heal whenever I want. Tentacruel goes down, I have roughly half health remaining. I figured this would be enough for the Ludicolo, but of course, it gets a critical hit with Surf. Lucky for me, Registeel hangs on with 24 hit points and knocks the Water Grass type out. Okay, but this doesn't actually put me in a good position because Milotic is still remaining and it's going to attack first. It uses Surf, which remember, the Steel type does not resist, but because of Amnesia, Registeel shrugs it off and gets one final return in. Its penultimate split is 1 hour, 49 minutes, and 54 seconds. While it is 13 minutes and 42 seconds slower than Regice, this is still a decent time and definitely puts Registeel on track for a sub 2 hour finish. But what about Regirock? And yeah, I have some bad news for everyone. Maybe some of you spotted early on into this video a critical mistake that I made with this thing, but I'm not going to tell you what it is right now. Instead, let's go through the league and slowly discover it, like I did when I was doing this playthrough. Sydney's first, I set up once with Curse, and then I figured that was enough and I could sweep with Hidden Power Rock and Return. The thing is, the Crawdaunt is able to survive my attacks when I only have +1, allowing Sydney to maximize Leech Seed's damage, stalling me with full restores, and then hitting with super effective Surf, polishing Regirock off. Okay, so clearly the mistake I made there was not what I was referring to before. If I set up twice, then I will have the damage range I need to one-shot all of his Pokemon, and this will prevent the problems I had in the last fight. Well, in this case, the Shift Tree sets up Double Team, and that could have messed me up because Leech Seed is still on the field because the Cacturn moves first. Luckily for me, Return hits, so I make it to his Absol, Leech Seed chips away, his Ace goes for Rock Slide, critical hits, but Regirock survives and finishes him off. This means that the mysterious mistake is yet to be discovered. Phoebe is very similar for Regirock when compared with Registeel. Regirock's higher attack stat means that I'm almost one-shotting the first Dusclops with just +1. If I could be a slightly higher level, like 60, probably though 63, then I would one-shot, and that would greatly reduce the chance that she's able to use Curse. But in this case, I just set up to +2, which is the smart play, and then I finish off her lead. I figured that this was going to be the win, but then the next Dusclops just barely survives on a sliver of health. It freezes me with Ice Beam and continues chipping away while I fail to defrost, getting a reset. In the next fight, Curse. Then in the third fight, I get the setup to +2 that I need. I take a third turn of setup against the second Dusclops, and from there I sweep her remaining team members. Without Amnesia, I think that Glacia could potentially be slightly more difficult. That said, Hidden Power Rock is actually super effective against all of her Pokemon. It even one-shots the Walrein. Next, she sends in Glalie. I decided to heal here because its moves aren't that powerful. They take me down to orange health before I polish it off. From there, I repeat my strategy, healing on the Celio and then knocking it out once Regirock wakes up. This leads to her final Glalie. I just barely survive its attack, heal up, it establishes Hail, essentially wasting a turn, and I polish it off. Okay, so Drake, I can't set up my special defense here, but that's fine. The Shelgon can use Dragon Claw on me. Plus, I only thought I would need +2 attack to win this fight, and it turns out I was right. While the Flygon survives, it doesn't really matter. It chips away with Earthquake for a bit. I heal against the Altaria because it does not have any good special attacks. Yes, Dragon Breath is special, but no, it's not very good. After that, the Salamence tries to use Dragon Claw. It does so little, and now Regirock has made it to the champion. And here is where we will decloak my enigmatic mistake, like a Wraith decloaking and then instantly getting destroyed by whatever unit is attacking it. Regirock is not prepared for success against Wallace. His first Pokemon is Wailord, and I want to reduce its damage from Water Spout as soon as is possible. So I use Hidden Power Rock, my most powerful move, and it does less than half. That means the Wailord's follow-up Water Spout does half to Regirock. I don't think I need to tell all of you, but as soon as this happened, I immediately began to panic. Of course, here if I attack it again, it's going to do significantly less damage, which gives me time to use a move like Curse, but Wallace is also going to use a full restore now, meaning that Water Spout's power will increase. And as a result of my lowered speed, Regirock faints. To get as much damage as is possible, I teach Regirock Earthquake in the place of Return, and I give it the Soft Sand to boost the damage further. This gives it an effective power of 110, which is 5 more than Hidden Power Rock. I'm able to do more than half to the Wailord, but Water Spout is still dealing a lot. Also, it just crits me on the second turn, so that's that. Apparently, sometimes the Wailord will use Blizzard, but when it does this, it still does a lot of damage. Like, oh my gosh. The Rock type is not weak to the Ice type, despite what Generation 1 taught me, but it's still a powerful special move. I finish off the Wailord just to see what he's going to send in next, and in this case, it is Gyarados. I think that's lucky for me because it's definitely going to be easy to finish off with Hidden Power. The next fight, I play completely different, instead going fully offensive with Earthquake, knocking the Wailord out in only 2 hits, moving on to the Gyarados with green health. Okay, this is the superior play. However, then the Water Flying type outspeeds with Surf, and it knocks Regirock out due to a critical hit. So we need to try that again, but don't worry, at level 61, I do not have the damage range required to finish off the Wailord. Just so everyone is fully informed, because I haven't talked about rare candy usage much throughout this video, I used a total of 12 before Tate and Liza, and now I am recognizing that that was likely a mistake. I am level 61 because I used rare candies before fighting Wallace, so this is the maximum level that I have for this fight unless I black out. I was hopeful that I wouldn't need to do this because the Gyarados can use Dragon Dance, and in this case, Hidden Power Rock is not able to finish it off. Okay, that is really discouraging. Luckily, Gyarados goes for another Dragon Dance, so I do finish it, and then the following Tentacruel goes for Hydro Pump, and Regirock survives on 1 hit point. This feels extremely hype and exciting, but don't worry, the Ludicolo is just faster, so that's another reset. Okay, watch me scroll around in my bag for a little bit, realizing just how bad this situation is. I tried 3 more times, but in the end it's just not working, so I am gonna have to black out and do additional training. There are some bumps along the way where Regirock gets the occasional reset, but eventually I make it back to Wallace, and this time I am level 63. Yeah, an entire league round only gave 2 levels. It is over the next damage rounding threshold though, so I should be consistent at least now against the Gyarados. Right away, things start off very well for me with a critical hit Earthquake, one-hitting the Wailord. Gyarados uses Surf, doing decent damage. I polish it off with Hidden Power Rock, and Earthquake is consistent against the Tentacruel. Okay, time for Ludicolo. Hidden Power Rock is doing more than half. It sets up Double Team, and I was hoping that I wouldn't miss, but no, of course I miss. And once again, the Ludicolo is being completely awful. You know, when the developers decided you needed Wailord and Relicanth in your party in order to unlock the Regis, I think what they were trying to communicate to the player is just how awful Ludicolo was going to be if you decide to catch the legendaries. Obviously not Regice or Registeel, my argument kind of it breaks down there, but Regirock is really getting destroyed by this thing. Sometimes arriving at it, I realize that I have to heal, otherwise I won't be able to win once I knock it out. And using rest against this thing is one of the worst feelings in the entire world. You just watch it smile at you while it sets up double team and destroys your dreams. After many more resets, it finally sank in that this is not working, and once again I will have to black out and train. This time I sweep through the league without resetting, and I make it back to Wallace at level 66. So is this enough? Well, no, the Gyarados is still doing about half. Then the Tentacruel polishes me off with Hydro Pump. I tried again to incorporate Curse on my set, but no, then the Wailord just one-shots me with Water Spout. Tentacruel one-hits, I tried damaging the Wailord and using Rest to set up against it, but no, that doesn't work either. By this point in the run, making it through league attempts is starting to drain my reserve of PP restoring items, so I had to go back onto the map and pick up some Lepa berries just so I can get to Wallace again. After defeating Drake, I am almost level 69, and I am really hoping that this is going to be enough. After all, going into the Wallace fight, the clock has now ticked over the 2 hour and 5 minute mark. I think it is safe to say that Regirock has completely fallen apart. Now I'm sure you're still wondering, Scott, what was this mistake that you made? Well, it was the fact that I chose a brave nature. At level 69, after knocking out the Wailord, my speed stat is 112. Please let that sink in. The Gyarados has 113 speed, the Tentacruel has 118, and the Milotic has 116. If I had 7 more speed right now, I could move first against all of these Pokemon, dramatically reducing the amount of damage that Regirock takes. The logical flaw that I made was thinking that Curse was going to be viable in pretty much every fight. If I am cutting my speed, then lowering my speed with a nature doesn't really matter because I'm expecting to move second. But in the battle against Wallace, moving second is a death sentence. And so of course level 69 is not nice enough, and I am going to have to go out again and continue training. While I do that, let's go back to Regice and Registeel and see how they do against Steven. With Regice, I didn't do any special preparation other than giving it a Pecha Berry so that it can heal poison when the Skarmory inflicts it with Toxic. I get lucky here for 2 reasons, because first turn it uses Toxic, and then second turn it misses with Steel Wing, allowing me to get a free knockout. I thought that Ice Beam was going to do much more damage to the Clay Doll, but unfortunately it hangs on. Steven uses a full restore and gets in a second Earthquake. That takes Regice to exactly half health when Cradily comes out. Ice Beam once again does not do enough damage, and Cradily uses Ancient Power, taking me to 25 hit points. I continue with the same type attack bonus damage, which finishes it off. However, he still has 3 Pokemon remaining, and I don't have a good option against the Armaldo. It'll have to be Ice Beam in this case, and unfortunately it survives with half health. Well, it looks like just a little bit more than half. This allows it to win the fight using Ancient Power. Okay, I think it's obvious what my mistake was. The Pecha Berry is not very utilitarian throughout the fight. If instead I pick up the leftovers on the ship, then I can give this to Regice and gain back health throughout the entire battle. Also, if I'm using this item, then Curse is going to be more useful, so I'm going to teach that in the place of Hidden Power Fire, and then Earthquake in the place of Thunderbolt, so I have access to a physical move. I was worried here that the Skarmory would be doing too much damage with Steel Wing, preventing me from healing with Rest after 1 or 2 hits, but you do have to remember that Steven's lead also likes to use Toxic and Spikes, and occasionally Steel Wing misses like we saw in the previous fight. Because of these factors, I am able to get fully set up. At this point, Steel Wing isn't doing very much. I think the only threat here is if it gets a critical hit. His lead goes down, Claydol comes out, of course I have to use Ice Beam against it. It would have taken a total of 3 hits this time, and I thought he was going to full restore, but instead he switches into Metagross, so I fall asleep against it. Now, it is using Meteor Mash, and it's doing a ton of damage. Luckily, with my Curse setup, I'm able to survive, and then strike back with Earthquake, which doesn't get the knockout. A little bit surprising. Anyways, I continue going for Earthquake. He uses a bunch of full restores, and eventually his ace goes down. Claydol comes back out, he uses his full restore on it, but despite that, I still finish it. I get lucky on the following Cradily, getting a freeze. Actually, while editing the video, I realized that it defrosted and then I got a second freeze, so that's awesome. Then Earthquake is able to two-shot the following Armaldo and one-hit the final Aggron. This gives Regice a final first playthrough time of 1 hour 45 minutes and 33 seconds, with 7 resets, 0 blackouts at level 69, nice, with a game time of 6 hours and 29 minutes. With Registeel, I make sure to pick up the leftovers right away because I know that this thing is going to be stalling against Steven. That said, I am going to give up Amnesia in favor of having Earthquake because I really don't want to use Return against all of his Pokemon. The strategy here is very self-explanatory. I'm just going to set up with Curse against the Skarmory. I honestly have nothing to worry about against it because its only damage dealing moves are Aerial Ace and Steel Wing, and it can't even use Toxic on me. With full setup, things get a bit annoying because he switches the Skarmory out, then I do very little damage to the Aggron because I am using Return. He once again switches, sending Metagross in, which does not save it from Earthquake. Then Claydol comes out, I have to use Return here. Following that, I polish off the Aggron, as well as the Skarmory, and move on to his final 2 fossil Pokemon. Armaldo is first. Earthquake just barely doesn't KO, giving him a chance to use a full restore, but its water pulses aren't doing much to Registeel. This thing is a defensive beast, and as a result, it is able to defeat Steven on its first attempt. It gets a time of 1 hour 55 minutes and 3 seconds with 17 resets, 0 blackouts at level 64, with a game time of 6 hours and 30 minutes. That is only 1 minute slower than Regice. Here is my first attempt tier list that ranks the Pokemon based on game time, and in this case, Registeel is just slightly behind Regice. I think in a follow-up playthrough it just might go faster because overall it does feel more consistent. And if we look at the rankings based on game time, nothing has changed. But don't worry, Registeel, because Regirock still has not defeated Wallace. After training to level 72, I fight the entire Elite Four again, and all of this training brings it up to level 73, almost 74. Let's try Wallace at this level and see if the damage rounding threshold was helpful. Well, I go into the battle and I'm damaged right away, but I am holding a Chesto Berry. I do damage to the Wailord, survive its Water Spout, heal, and then knock it out. At my higher level, I am now able to outspeed the Gyarados consistently and then level up going into the Tentacruel to get 119 speed, which is exactly what I need to move first, knocking it out consistently. Now, with his fastest Pokemon out of the way, I just might have a chance, as long as I don't miss against the Ludicolo, because of course this thing goes for double team first turn. This Pokemon is so frustrating to face. I have had no relief. I need to do a bug or flying type for my next run, just so I can defeat this thing easily. In this battle, Regirock has no problems. I finish it off. Earthquake two-shots the Milotic, and then Whiscash comes out. I decided to set up with Curse so I could do a little bit more damage to it, as well as tanking its Earthquakes better, but no, of course this thing is going to be going for Surf, and also because of poison damage, I end up going down. Still, that fight was very good, and I burnt my Chesto Berry with Rest against the Wailord because of a player mistake. I would be extremely surprised if Regirock can't win this at level 73. Well, it can't win if Ludicolo sets up with a double team, forcing me to miss over and over again. Regirock depletes its uses of Hidden Power, and then has to resort to Earthquake to finish the Grass type off, and while I do manage it, I only have 4 uses of the move left over, and I didn't think this was going to be enough to finish off both the Milotic and the Whiscash, so I decided to reset without wasting more time. Here's how it goes. 2 hits to knock the Wailord out. I 1-hit the Gyarados, 1-hit the Tentacruel, then 2 uses of Hidden Power as long as I don't miss. Well, 4 in this case because he continues to use full restores. Actually, 5. I cannot believe it. I end up missing. Ludicolo hits with a Surf, which does more than half, and finally I take it out. Okay, so can I make it past the Milotic? Well, Hidden Power Rock allows me to 2-shot it, and then for the Whiscash, I can burn my Chesto Berry, healing to full. Its Surf does about a quarter, and then I use Hidden Power for less damage, hoping that next turn Earthquake will knock the fish out without Wallace using a full restore. It also now sees that it can't get a KO, so it goes for Amnesia, giving me 1 more turn, and that takes it to red health, giving Wallace the opportunity to use another full restore. This man actually has 4 of these items. It is ridiculous. You know what else is ridiculous? How difficult this fight was with Regirock. But as we have examined, that's largely due to my nature. I think dropping my speed really impacted my results here. Either way, I have to finish this first playthrough. Finally, the Whiscash goes down, and Regirock gets its Wallace split. Its time of 2 hours, 24 minutes, and 13 seconds with 37 resets, 0 blackouts at level 74, with a game time of 7 hours and 53 minutes, is obviously not very good. So, this is not actually presumptuous at all. Let's pull up the first attempt tier lists, and Regirock is going dead last in both of them. With that out of the way, now let's see how it does against Steven's Stone. Of course, for this fight, I'm going to use the leftovers in combination with Hidden Power Rock, Earthquake, and Curse. Rest is there so I can heal after I set up against the Skarmory. Remember, the Steel type does do super effective damage to me, and it can poison Regirock, which is a bit annoying, and it causes 2 additional rests before I finally take out Steven's lead. Now, having to rely so much on physical setup means that the Armaldo that follows can hit decently hard with Water Pulse. Also, it confuses Regirock, and I thought this might be the end, but no, I wake up and get to use Hidden Power, knocking it out in a single hit. Next is Cradily. Hidden Power continues its spree here, and then Steven sends in Claydol. I have to use Hidden Power Rock to knock it out, which is slow, giving him an opportunity to switch into Aggron, but don't worry, it just tries to charge Solar Beam, and then I knock it out. Next, he brings Claydol back out, uses a full restore, actually 2, which gives it time to hit with 1 Earthquake, getting a crit, bringing Regirock to yellow health before Metagross. This is not great. I was really worried it was going to KO me with Psychic, but my Rock type just barely survives, uses Earthquake, and it's enough. At long last, the Reggie that I had the highest hopes for clocks in with its first playthrough time of 2 hours, 29 minutes, and 20 seconds, with 37 resets, 0 blackouts at level 75, with a game time of 8 hours and 12 minutes. After the first playthrough, I really felt that Regice was the best, with Registeel just slightly behind it. On the other hand, I wasn't able to get an accurate read on how Regirock is going to do in its follow-up playthrough, because I think by just switching its nature, it will perform vastly better. Yes, I am going to do more playthroughs. I am dedicated to getting an accurate tier list. Of course, the impossible tier needs to be sorted correctly. Before we get into that though, I want to put these times in context with other Pokemon that I've played. While the Regis are technically impossible and that makes their results confined to the bottom tier, if they weren't impossible, how would these results compare with other Pokemon? Well, Regice's time of 1 hour 45 minutes and 33 seconds would currently rank 2nd overall in the tier list, being a little bit faster than Armaldo's result of 1 hour 47 minutes and 8 seconds. Registeel's time would place it just in front of Pelipper and behind Gardevoir. Regirock's time would put it just ahead of Aerodactyl, another rock type. For game time, Regice and Registeel would be just behind Armaldo and both ahead of Metagross, whereas Regirock with its 8 hour and 12 minute time would be behind Slacking and ahead of Mawile. Do remember that my experience as a player was significantly higher when playing the Regis when compared with these other Pokemon, and that's why I don't like to rely on first playthrough results, so now let's jump into these Pokemon's follow-up playthroughs and see just how much time I was able to shave off. We're going to start with Regice, and yes, I said Regice rather than Regice, because after recording all of the other voiceover, I got some comments on my latest video talking about this pronunciation, and some of you mentioned that both are technically correct, so I prefer Regice, and for the rest of the video, I'm going to go with that. While I might not have enjoyed these designs as a kid, now as a 31-year-old man, I'm really starting to like the Regis. They each feel like the perfect embodiment of their typing. The Ice type is meant to be the Glass Cannon type because it resists so few other types, only itself, but Ice type moves are really fantastic. In a solo challenge, Glass Cannons are usually quite good, but that's because they're generally paired with decent speed stats, but of course the Regis are all slow, so Regice really struggles with consistency. I restarted this playthrough so many times to beat Roxanne at a decently low level without having to overtrain. The problem is, once I get by her, Brawly is still pretty brutal, as well as the second rival, so I can't even make it to Watson. My strategy to get around this section of the game is to train up to level 24, and then use one rare candy to get superpower so that then I can face Brawly with a fighting type move. It's also nice having a physical move because then I can buff its power with Curse and use this to defeat the rival. Of course, there are still early game problems to solve, and the next one is Flannery. My strategy here was to level up to 33 to get Ancient Power right away and then defeat her with this rock type move. In retrospect though, this is just not really a good choice. Let me explain why. If you look at my move pool on the right hand side of the screen, you can see that once again I am running Hidden Power Fire with Regice, and honestly this makes no sense. Once I gain access to Thunderbolt, I can hit ice types for decent damage. After all, 3 of them in this playthrough are paired with the water type, so I have super effective damage covering them, and the Glaceon Glacia's team are not particularly intimidating. In this case, I have so many resets to Flannery, and if I had just chosen a typing like Hidden Power Water, she would have been significantly easier. Once I finally defeat her, I have a total of 4 resets, and I proceed with the playthrough despite being very disappointed. It's moments like this that I consider restarting to give the Pokemon a better attempt. However, after 45 minutes of time had been invested in the run, and I was shooting for an April 1st release date, I decided I didn't have time to go back and start again. After all, I would likely have to restart many times to get by Roxanne. Also, having cleared Flannery, all of the inconsistency of the early game basically evaporates. Now Regice has access to Ice Beam, Thunderbolt, Hidden Power Fire, and Amnesia. Before Tate and Liza, I use a total of 12 rare candies. That's all that's remaining at this point, taking Regice up from level 46 to level 58. At a higher level, they really aren't that challenging, and now for the late game, I have Amnesia to boost my special defense. Fighting Sydney, you'll notice that I taught Shockwave, and this makes absolutely no sense. Generally, I use this play because I'm scared of having my accuracy lowered by the Mightyana's Sand Attack, but in this case with Clear Body, that can't take place. This means Regice can technically speed up its results by using Shockwave right after it obtains the TM upon defeating Watson. Okay, so later in the league, I have some problems against Drake, which I feel is truly ironic. His Kingdra paralyzes Regice, and it ends up as a loss. This only increased the level of disappointment that I was feeling with this run. After defeating Wallace, I move on to Steven, and for this fight I'm going to be utilizing the Leftovers, as well as the moveset Ice Beam, Rest, Curse replacing Amnesia, and then Earthquake replacing Thunderbolt. The flaw for my Ice type here is the fact that the Skarmory can crit, and this basically just ends the fight. Regice came into this playthrough inconsistent, and don't worry, it is going to go out inconsistent, because by the time I defeat Steven, with a time of 1 hour 41 minutes and 18 seconds, I have had a total of 9 resets. Luckily, no blackouts along the way. I finished the game at level 67, and this was with a game time of 6 hours and 12 minutes. Okay, so this playthrough was pretty rough, but despite that, I was still able to make a modest improvement for Regice. Because I was aiming for the April 1st release date, I didn't want to waste any time, so I immediately tried Registeel again. Unlike Regirock, a Brave Nature really makes sense for this Pokemon. My idea for this playthrough is to really lean into Registeel's defensive playstyle, utilizing Curse. Also, I wanted to prevent the mistake I made with Regice with Flannery, so I give Registeel Hidden Power Water. I'm also going to entirely skip Brawly until later in the game when I'm doing my backtracking. This choice is a little bit easier to make with Registeel because Regice was relying on the experience from Brawly's gym to level up to 24 so that I could use a rare candy to get access to superpower. But with Registeel's incredible defensive stats and the fact that Curse synergizes well with its moves, I can fight Rival 2 immediately. This also means I save 1 rare candy for later in the game, which is going to cut a little bit of training. Now this fight does get very close, but in the end I managed to pull through with only 2 hit points. We need to talk about the strategy against Watson because Registeel needs a very precise combination. I want to set up to +3 to ensure that Superpower is going to one-shot both the Magneton as well as the Manectric that follows. However, I make a mistake here by prioritizing Superpower's accuracy against Electrike. This means I only have +2 for the Magneton, which of course is enough. However, it isn't for the Manectric when Superpower has lowered my attack stat 2 times. Due to this and paralysis, Registeel gets its first reset of this playthrough. So the obvious choice is I just need to use Rock Tomb against the Electrike even if its accuracy is trash. With Watson clear to teach Secret Power over Rock Tomb, Registeel is going to rely on a lot of normal type moves in combination with the Silk Scarf for maximum damage throughout the mid and late game. After that, I backtrack to Slateport City, grab Hidden Power, and teach it in the place of Metal Claw. Honestly, same type attack bonus steel moves don't really matter that much, and if we think about it, Return with the Silk Scarf is going to do more damage than Hidden Power Steel would. You might say that I should pick up the Metal Coat to just improve the Steel type move's damage like I'm doing with the Silk Scarf, but no, that is not going to save time because the only way to obtain this held item is by getting it from a Wild Magnemite or Magneton, and each of these only have a 5% chance to carry it. Because Return is going to perform roughly as well or better, I figured I could free up Hidden Power to help me against Flannery, and yeah, then I have a reset to her, which was extremely frustrating. The issue here is that Hidden Power Water just barely didn't 2-hit KO the Torkoal, allowing it to attack twice with Overheat. Do note that this turtle Pokemon is holding a White Herb, so it restores its special attack after attacking once. I'm gonna take a moment and justify my choice of Hidden Power Water. I figured that it would be great because it's 4 times damage on the Numel line, and I figured that Torkoal has lower special defense, so it would have a better damage range when compared with a move like Hidden Power Ground. But it became obvious to me that Hidden Power Ground would have been the better choice because it synergizes with Curse. Registeel pulls through on the next fight because it gets a better damage range against the Torkoal, but this fight really left me unsatisfied. I backtrack, crush Brawly, teach Ancient Power in the place of Hidden Power. This is another problem with Hidden Power Water, it really is only useful for one battle. This moveset upgrade leaves me with a set that I can only describe as the Power of Curse. After that, I have a tight battle against Winona. The chip damage here stacks up, leaving Registeel on only red health when it finally pulls through. In the department store, I grab 5 protein, then in Shoal Cave, I enter here only so that I can obtain the rare candy. I don't want to waste extra time getting the Shell Bell. Before Tate and Liza, I use a total of 13 rare candies, going from level 45 to level 58. So here I am the same level as Regice, but I have done less training. I thought this was going to give me a sweep against them, but unfortunately the Lunatone hits with Hypnosis and this causes a reset. After winning against them as well as Juan, I grab 2 rare candies and I remind Registeel of how to use Amnesia. So my set going into the league is Return, Amnesia, Curse, and Rest. This is the most defensive set I could think about. Of course, after defeating Sydney, I do need a move that will actually hit Phoebe's Pokemon, so I'm going to teach Earthquake in the place of Rest. Registeel doesn't need to heal because it is so fantastic as a defensive wall. Now the Ghost-type Specialist is a major threat because Registeel doesn't have a way to play around the first Dusclops' Curse. Luckily for me, whenever it does use this move before my Steel-type gets to +2, it is just a quick reset, so it's not the end of the world. I didn't want to train extra for this fight to ensure that I would one-shot the Dusclops with just +1, because once Registeel clears Phoebe, the rest of the game is very straightforward. Well, that is if I don't play sloppily, because I forget to give a Cherry Berry before Glacia, and so due to paralysis, I have a reset here. And then against Wallace, after defeating many of his Pokemon, the Milotic crits me, and yes, this does cause another reset. This one was much less frustrating because the flaw with defensive play is the fact that crits are essentially designed to ruin it. For Steven, I have taught Brick Break in the place of Return. While this doesn't give me good damage against his Claydol, it can never establish a screen, and this gives Registeel a final second playthrough time of 1 hour, 41 minutes, and 30 seconds, with 6 resets, 0 blackouts at level 67, and a game time of 6 hours and 21 minutes. Looking at these results in the context of the Regice results that I just got, I sat back in my chair and just sort of uttered uttered a sigh. These two Pokemon are now 12 seconds apart. Because of all of the flaws that I mentioned in these follow-up playthroughs, I was very unsatisfied with these results, and I didn't feel like I had a good sense of which one of them was really better. Regice feels very inconsistent, and Registeel feels like it should be consistent. I just made a ton of player mistakes. So if I took out all those blunders and reduced the reset count to like 1 or 2, it probably would have had a better time than Regice. But if I played the Ice type again, maybe its flaws and inconsistency would lead to more resets, giving it a higher time. However, it could also get a lot of good luck and then just crush its way through the entire game. Well, I had to finish the video by April 1st, of course, so I decided to go into a Regirock playthrough, and I was very worried about this one. It did not get good results in its first playthrough, but I am going to be able to change its nature now, which will really improve its results against Wallace. So, which nature is best? Well, the answer is really obvious, and I can't believe I didn't see this at the beginning of the playthrough. I should be going for an adamant nature. This thing is never going to utilize its electric type coverage. Okay, so now let's talk about Roxanne, and we're going to watch some footage that is not from my second playthrough with Regirock. I attempted to fight her with struggle at level 15 in the hopes that I could shave off some early game training to improve Regirock's time. And this is how it's going, so this is just not going to work. Unfortunately, the rock type is going to need to level to 17 on weak early game Pokemon so that it gets access to Curse. After defeating her, I make a critical misplay with Regirock, which is to backtrack to face Brawly. The reason this is a mistake is because access to rock moves which have the same type attack bonus is going to be enough to cover the rival's Grovyle, and my special defense stat is high enough that I can shrug off its absorbs. By going back to Brawly, I have one reset, and as soon as this happened, I realized the mistake I had made. Once again, leaving me quite disappointed in this playthrough. But you know, April 1st deadline and all, so I decided to push through and try and get a final time with Regirock. After defeating Watson, who is not an issue at all, I get Secret Power as well as Hidden Power Rock. But I'm not going to go back to Slateport to pick it up because using Rock Throw against Flannery is enough. After she's defeated, then I get my go-to same type attack bonus move, and I also complete 2 additional puzzles in the Trick House, which I have never done before. This gives me access to the Hard Stone, which will boost the power of rock type moves by 10%. From here on out, it is very simple for Regirock. I teach Iron Defense over Secret Power during the fight against Maxie. This is specifically so I can set this up to minimize damage from Tate and Liza's Claydol on turn 1. And this is a moment where all of you are going to be cringing at home. Look at my Regirock, it's level 45. I forgot to use my rare candies before this fight. As a result, I have another incredibly frustrating reset. Don't worry, after I use my rare candies, then turn 1 Iron Defense, after that 2 Curses, and from there I spam Hidden Power, sweeping through their team. For Juan, you might wonder what the right strategy is, and it's really simple. Just don't set up. With an adamant nature, Regirock has enough speed so it can easily make it through his team. Unlike Registeel, Regirock's higher attack stat means that Phoebe isn't a problem due to Curse. But she is an issue here because of Grudge. I only have one move that can hit ghost types, so that's one reset. We're going to skip the other Elite Four members and go straight into the Wallace fight. My moveset for this battle is Hidden Power Rock, Earthquake, Curse, and Rest. But the most important part of this is that I'm using the Shell Bell because healing is critical and the leftovers aren't available yet. Before the fight, I used 2 rare candies to get to level 66, and my speed stat is now 124, so of course I'm moving first against all of Wallace's Pokemon. The only flaw in this strategy is the fact that the Ludicolo is probably gonna spam double team, and if I miss, I'm going to lose. It happens once, but after that, I'm able to defeat Wallace and move on to Steven Stone with the exact same set. And with it, Regirock completely crushes him, earning itself a second playthrough time of 1 hour 44 minutes and 28 seconds, with 6 resets, 0 blackouts at level 68, with a game time of 6 hours and 35 minutes. Regice had modest improvements, Registeels were pretty good, but Regirocks are honestly incredible. In my second playthrough with it, I was 44 minutes and 52 seconds faster. I had 31 less resets, finished the game am 7 levels lower with a game time that was 1 hour and 36 minutes faster. So you know what thought was going through my head after I completed this run? It was not a sense of pride or a sense of victory or satisfaction. Actually, it was the opposite of all of those. I looked at the 3 Reggies results, sat there for like 2 minutes in disbelief at how close these 3 are. I could have just decided that this was enough and released the April Fool's Day video on April Fool's Day, but you know, joke's on me because I did not feel comfortable ranking Regice ahead of Registeel. After all, they are 12 seconds apart, and I did not feel comfortable ranking either of them ahead of Regirock because I could see many ways in which this playthrough could still improve. So here's the twist that I'm sure all of you have been anticipating from the beginning of this video. Yeah, of course, I came back and did third playthroughs because we need better results to more accurately understand how these Pokemon perform in Emerald version. Going into these playthroughs, I was most worried about Regice because it's not very consistent, and I knew that its results could just fall apart if I got some bad luck. That said, I can correct a lot of mistakes from my second playthrough, so this time I'm going to skip Brawly, level up to 24, and then use 1 rare candy to defeat the rival, and then I defeat Watson. Now for Flannery, I'm going to be using Hidden Power Water because the special move pairs well with Regice's stats. I come out of the fight against her with 0 resets, and this spree continues throughout all of the late game gym leaders. Sydney, Phoebe, and Glacia are all defeated without another reset, and then I battle Drake. Obviously here I'm going to set up Amnesia on turn 1, and then knock out the Shelgon with Ice Beam. Next he chooses Flygon. I will survive its Earthquake and the following Salamence's Rock Slide, but that is only true if it doesn't get a critical hit. This inflicts too much damage, and then his ace is able to knock Regice out. Having my first reset here against the final member of the Elite Four was actually very surprising. I figured that Regice would have had more to this point. It was also surprising because why is the Ice-type legendary continually losing against the Dragon-type specialist? Now, unlike the Drake fight, the critical hits here that Steven can get are much more likely because I have to spend my time setting up using Curse. The difference between Regirock and Regice is their defensive stats, making Steel Wing hit far harder when I'm using the Ice type. Because all of these legendaries have a slow growth rate, I don't think that additional levels makes any sense for this battle. After all, you can win on your first attempt. I have 1 loss due to a critical hit, and then I sweep through Steven's team and arrive at his Metagross. And yeah, guess what happens? It gets a critical hit, giving me my 3rd reset. Of these, I would say that 2 were quite lucky for the AI, and 1 was to be expected. For me, everything works out on my next attempt, and Regice clocks in with a final time of 1 hour 35 minutes even, with 3 resets, 1 blackout at level 66, with a game time of 6 hours and 1 minute. By the way, you're probably wondering where my blackout was, and it was on Slateport Beach early on due to confusion against the Tentacool. It was definitely a frustrating moment in the run for me, but I decided to continue anyway. What about Registeel? For this playthrough, I decided to give it Hidden Power Ground because it synergizes better with its Curse moveset. I should also mention here that Austin used Hidden Power Water as well as Hidden Power Ground with this thing, and in the end he decided that he preferred Hidden Power Water. For me, I disagree. I think that Hidden Power Ground is just a little bit more consistent against Flannery because you can set up with Curse and then sweep all of her Pokemon with additional damage. If you're at level 30 or 31, you are not going to get the 2-hit range on the Torkoal, and tanking an overheat is not what Registeel wants to do. That said, these issues can be alleviated if you just do a little bit of extra training and go up to level 33 over a damage rounding threshold. Editor Scott here, I realized I missed something in this Flannery fight, and that is the fact that I only set up to +1. This is very specifically so that Registeel still moves first against the Torkoal and can use Hidden Power Ground twice. Now from here, it might seem like there's very little to talk about with Registeel, but that's not the case. I think of the 3, this one was the least intuitive to figure out, especially considering its moveset. Because it feels like a combination of the other 2 Regis, it has far more options available to it, and due to its balanced stats, you can play it in a bunch of different ways. What I found was best was the Power of Curse moveset, Hidden Power, Super Power, Ancient Power, and Curse, all the way until I get to Tate and Eliza. Then I switch to Return, Rest, Amnesia, and Curse. This way I can boost both my special defense and my physical defense, ensuring that all of their Pokemon are doing very little damage. I can heal and utilize a Chesto Berry if I need it, and Return, while resisted by their rock types, still does enough damage. Then before the league, I teach Aerial Ace in the place of Return. This move is decent against Sydney, and it allows me to get the job done, but it is also going to continue helping against Phoebe. Now I will teach Earthquake in the place of Rest, because Registeel doesn't need to heal anymore. However, I want to have 2 moves on my set that can hit ghost types. This way, if the Bayonet goes for Grudge and depletes my PP with one of them, I can continue attacking and win. Also, I will be prioritizing Earthquake because it has higher damage, which means by the end of the fight, I will likely have PP left over on Aerial Ace, which bypasses accuracy checks, meaning Sableye can't set up with Double Team. I've done these things to ensure that I waste as little time as possible during this fight, because out of the entire run, it is the most difficult battle for Registeel. That's only because the first Dusclops can use Curse to cause a loss. I mentioned before that there might be potential to play around this, but overall I am trying to rely on Rest less in these challenges because I think it raises the bar for what is possible with each Pokemon. What I've been finding is that in fights where you have to use Rest to scrape out a win, it tends to take just as much time as if you had reset and just tried again. Okay, so the remainder of the league is extremely simple because I can set up all my defense stats and just crush absolutely everything. Now, one place where I could probably save some time is picking up the leftovers before Steven. I bet Registeel doesn't need this because its defensive stats should be enough for this fight, provided he doesn't get a crit. And in this fight, he doesn't, allowing the Steel type to clock in with a final time of 1 hour, 35 minutes, and 39 seconds, with 1 reset, 0 blackouts, at level 67, with a game time of 6 hours and 10 minutes. So once again, these 2 Pokemon are incredibly close to each other. In this case, only 39 seconds apart. In the past, I have tended to be quite critical of Game Freak's choices in designing these early generation Pokemon games, but today I need to give them credit because these 3 legendaries are well balanced with each other. Coming out of these 2 third playthroughs, I know that I can get better results with each of them, but there's still one more to play, so let's see how Regirock does. After all, to this point, it has been achieving the most consistently slow times. So let's add Regice to the first spot in the impossible tier, and Registeel will take the second spot, which is currently last place. And only one question remains: where will Regirock place? For this playthrough, I didn't change anything with my setup. I'm still running an Adamant Nature and Hidden Power Rock. However, I am going to greatly improve my execution of the run, especially with navigating the overworld. I think that's one of the biggest areas I can improve my play in Pokemon Emerald. Early on into the run, I have some bad luck against Watson due to paralysis, and here is where I take my first reset. Now, Regice and Registeel are quite far apart on the consistency spectrum, and it does feel like Regirock is placed right between them. Because of that, I knew that there would be some bumps along the way like this, so I kept playing. After all, once Watson is defeated, Regirock can go on a tear through the mid-game and arrive at the league with still only 1 reset. And yeah, it just crushes Sydney, Phoebe, Glacia, Drake, and Wallace, arriving at Steven with a time significantly faster than the other 2. I think this might be the Pokemon that I have improved the most between first playthrough and final playthrough. That's definitely the case if we limit the scope to just Emerald version. So now let's see how this rock type does against Steven Stone. It's running the same set as before: Hidden Power, Earthquake, Curse, and Rest. This provides me all the options I need, and my incredibly high defense stat means that it can shrug off Skarmory's Steel Wing. Also, even if it gets a critical hit, I'm not that worried. This fight does take some time, and I want to just draw your attention to one small detail on my overlay, which is the fact that my defense stat right now is over 1000. Yes, this is possible starting in Generation 3. In Generation 1 and 2, all of your stats are hard capped at 999, but this limitation was removed. I do want to note though that this stat is actually incorrectly calculated because it is stopping my stat at 999 and then adding the badge boost on top of that. I fixed this now after reviewing all the footage, so for future videos it'll be better. Okay, so let's get back to this battle and talk about its results, because Steven gets no key critical hits, allowing allowing Regirock to clock in with a final time of 1 hour 33 minutes and 10 seconds, with only a single reset, no blackouts, at level 68 with a game time of 6 hours and 2 minutes. With this result, it is able to pull a complete reversal and take the top spot in the impossible tier away from Regice. There is one piece of information that you aren't privy to, and that is the fact that I played this Regirock playthrough before Registeel and Regice's final runs. Because of that, I had less experience for it, but it still performed better. After I had done all of this work, Austin posted a screenshot of his Registeel time, and of course he beat all of my times! If you are unaware, Austin is a significantly better player than I am. I think that his result proves that these three are very competitive with each other. I do think that we could continue to push these results lower and eventually get them under an hour and 30 minutes. I think it would probably be easiest with Regirock, and Registeel would just sort of resist you because that's what the steel type does. It's defensive, and this generally does not pair well with a speedrun. Of course, in my tier list, I'm ranking using my results, so today it's going to be Regirock followed by Regice, with Registeel being in last place. But it definitely earns itself a consolation prize because of the three, it is the one that I enjoy playing the most. Not to mention, Registeel just looks the best of the three. As a kid, this was definitely my favorite. Alright, with that, I have finished my first ever Emerald Versus video. I'm going to be doing more of these throughout the year, and I hope you are excited for them. Since this was such a colossal, gargantuan, and titanic project, I think that I'm going to do something a little bit lighter and maybe faster for my next video. So stay tuned in about a month and a half for the next installment in my Emerald series, where I am going to play the game with Ninjask. It's definitely fast with 160 base speed and the speed boost ability, but it also has the erratic growth rate and a 4x weakness to rock moves. Yeah, I anticipate that it's going to be a pretty painful run. Thank you so much if you support this channel directly, it really means the world to me. Now, if you've made it this far, you're incredible. I'll see you in my next video. Well, maybe you actually want more of me, and if that is the case, I have made a new channel where I am planning to talk about StarCraft 1 and maybe StarCraft 2 in the future. I'm probably not going to promote this channel in any other location here on my main channel, so if you're curious about seeing the Infested Terran playthrough, go over there, subscribe to the channel, and I will release it when the video is finished. On the theme of the entire video, this message will self-destruct in 1 to 2 weeks, so if you were lucky enough to see it, you were definitely here when the video was still new.